Welcome, everyone, to the Thursday edition of Fair Territory. I'm Ken Rosenthal here with Alanna Rizzo. And Alanna, I must say, it has been a rather eventful week in the baseball world, a week that was highly unanticipated. I'm talking, of course, about the sudden and shocking resignation of Tony Clark, the reasons he resigned, the inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, of course, the federal investigation that continues into his handling of the union's finances. That investigation's been ongoing, but people were saying the whole time that they never expected it to lead to much. We'll see about that, but the way this went down and how he resigned and why he resigned, Alanna, I get surprised every so often, not too often, by things that happen in baseball. This one surprised me.
Well, Ken, I don't think you're alone in that. I think it kind of sent surprising shockwaves through the world of baseball. And obviously, the timing is interesting as well, because we had thought even before this announcement of the resignation that there was likely going to be a work stoppage, a lockout, and that seems to be a guarantee. Now the union moves forward with Bruce Meyer.
Right. That idea that there is going to be a lockout, that's not changing. There is going to be a lockout. And actually, a lot of fans and people I know who are not necessarily in the media asked me in the wake of what happened here, what does this mean? Does this help things along because Tony Clark is now out? No, not at all. Tony Clark was, yes, the head of the union, but Bruce Meyer is the lead negotiator and will continue as the lead negotiator. And Bruce Meyer was hired not to be Major League Baseball's friend. He was hired to fight for player rights. And he's going to do that in the same way he did that in the last CBA during the 2020 COVID negotiations. And beyond that, the players seem almost galvanized by what has happened here. Now, it's early, and we will see how they hold together. We will see how the owners hold together. It's real easy to talk tough right now when we're 9 months away or so from the expiration of the CBA. But Bruce Meyer is someone who will be, no doubt, some experienced in this role and a guy who has been around now for some time, 7.5 years, I believe. He understands the issues. He understands what is at stake here. He understands all of that. And Chris Bassett, in talking to me last night after this vote went down when Bruce Meyer was elected unanimously by the players, Bassett made the point that the union is going to be more transparent within now to the players from the leadership. And he believes that will help. So we'll see how this all transpires. But in terms of the union strategy, in terms of the union's approach, I expect nothing to change. If anything, from what they are saying about how they will now operate internally, perhaps they will be stronger.
Ken, how important was it, in your opinion, to make sure that they went with somebody within the organization? Bruce Meyer obviously joined the Major League Baseball Players Association in 2018. It was the second in command under Tony Clark. So he knows the ways of the world in terms of what's been going on with the union for many years now. And I think the timing of this being 9 months away from a potential stoppage, it's important to have somebody internally that has already been within the fabric of the union. So that's not a distraction.
Alana, I totally agree. And in many ways, there was no other choice. There certainly was no way, in my opinion, that they could have gone outside and hired someone from beyond the baseball world to go be the head of the baseball union. And the reason I say that is the baseball history of labor negotiations, the baseball particular labor negotiations, it's a world unto its own. It is not something you can bring in, or not a situation where you can bring in someone from the outside and expect that person to understand right away and grasp the issues and the history and all of the acrimony that has taken place over what, 5+ decades now. So from that perspective alone, Bruce Meyer was clearly the right choice. Now, he is the interim executive director, and depending upon how this CBA negotiation turns out, they will then determine if he is the permanent director or if they then want to go outside. If you do it at that point, after a CBA is in place and you've got 4 or 5 years, okay, someone can pick it up. Bruce Meyer had to learn all of these things when he came over from the NHL, I believe. So, yeah, That all is a factor here and certainly was a reason why the players elected Meyer. And I thought also what Bassett said kind of vaguely, but I thought I understood what he was saying about Bruce Meyer and Matt Nussbaum, the union's general counsel, who was appointed to interim deputy executive director. He said those guys have had the players' backs during this FBI investigation. They have done things the right way. Evidently, a lot of players felt Tony Clark wasn't doing things the right way, both within the way he was operating the union, whether he's guilty of a crime or not, and of course, whether he was or the way he was leading the union. So, from that perspective, the players seem pretty comfortable with this as a whole. You're going to always have people who are not happy. And as I wrote, some people don't like Bruce Meyer, even within the player population and even within the union. But they go forward now. The timing was unfortunate, but we're still a long ways away from this really getting interesting.
Ken, Bruce Meyer, of course, is known as a labor negotiator, a labor lawyer, knows that type of law inside and out. How important is it at this point in where the union is to have somebody that is a labor negotiator versus somebody that was a former player like Tony Clark was? Obviously, Bruce Meyer is the interim executive director, Mike Nussbaum, the interim deputy executive director. How important is it to have labor negotiation at the top of the union? And moreover, do the players need to does Bruce Meyer kind of need to win these players over that wanted him ousted about 2 years ago?
It's important to have a labor negotiator at the top. Tony Clark was the first former player to lead the union after Marvin Miller, Donald Fear, and Michael Weiner, all attorneys, preceded him. And yes, it seems to me that that person should be an attorney, a labor lawyer, someone who understands the ins and outs of that part of it. Now, Tony Clark had his own skills as a leader of the union, mostly in the way he related to players as he could as a former player himself. What I wrote today is that Bruce Meyer, he has led to a certain degree. He's led his staff, he has led labor negotiations with baseball, but he hasn't had to lead in this manner. He has to lead now in a grander manner. And yes, Alanna, you're right. There was an attempted coup 2 years ago. It wasn't all the players, but it was a significant number, at least significant enough for this to become an issue. And even in the last few days, there have been people who have said, I'm not so sure this is the way we should go. I know the vote was unanimous, but there have been some dissenters. So he's going to have to grow into that part of the role. He certainly can negotiate. That's what he does. But there is a distinction between being the lead negotiator and the leader of the entire union.
Definitely some interesting times within the Major League Baseball Players Association. Ken, I appreciate the insight. Let's move on to some baseball, shall we? Braves Spencer Schwellenbach underwent elbow cleanup on Wednesday, and Hurston Waldrop will undergo a similar procedure on Monday. Of course, we're talking about the Braves here. What does this mean for this club?
It's not good news. And the Braves, if you remember at the start of the offseason, what Alex Anthopoulos, their president of baseball operations, has talked about is finding a pitcher who could be a playoff starter, someone to start a playoff game. They have not acquired that person. And that was when they were healthy, when they were still looking for that type of pitcher. Now, Spencer Schwellenbach, was arguably their number two starter, while Strider comes off the surgery and is still kind of finding himself. That's a huge loss. Hurston Waldrop, a little bit less of a loss. Not that he didn't show great things last season, he did. But he had options left. Bryce Elder does not have options left. Joey Wentz does not have options left. Hurston Waldrop had an uphill fight to make the team just from that perspective alone. Forget talent, ability, and even performance. We all know how it works when a player has options left versus players who don't. That player has an uphill battle. So obviously, you don't want to see any pitcher go down, but Schwellenbach is perhaps the bigger blow. Now, where are they with this? Let's take a look at their starting rotation options because it's still an interesting group, but it's not necessarily a group that you thought was as good as before. Sale, Strider, and Lopez. Good. Grant Holmes, good. Bryce Elder. Now, he's the interesting guy. His velo jumped about 2 miles in September. He was better in September. He's not a hard thrower, but they feel perhaps that he can hold this down and hold it down in a way that at least buys them some time. And if they have the offensive year that they anticipated last year and didn't get, without Acuna and without Profar to start the season, then maybe they'll get back to a team that is indeed a threat, even with these injuries that they're facing. Now, the question fans might have, question I have, frankly, is why don't the Braves just go sign Lucas Giolito or Zach Littell or even Max Scherzer? And obviously, that still can happen. And maybe that is something they will look at. But with the exception of Scherzer, at least in his past, those are not top of the rotation starters. And the Braves might argue for a certain price that they're not worth even more than Bryce Elder would be kind of at a minimum salary. So I'm not so sure they're going to go in that direction, but those pitchers still are out there. And one more injury, I will say this, the Braves are going to have no choice.
The Braves not the only ones, Ken, dealing with some injuries. Let's focus on the Baltimore Orioles in the American League now. Jordan Westburg is not participating in any sort of baseball activities for the O's. The Baltimore Banner's Andy Koska saying Westburg went for imaging on his elbow. That's the last thing that this club needs, Ken.
It is. He's a huge part of what they do. And of course, he missed a lot of time last year, and that hurt them. No question about it. Now, first off, with Westburg, we need to find out what exactly is wrong. Is it the oblique? Is it the elbow, as Andy Koska is perhaps suggesting here? And if it's the elbow, well, then what are we looking at? How long is he going to be out? Now, the Orioles are in somewhat of a protected position in that they have Kobe Mayo. And Kobe Mayo is a guy that was a top prospect, top 20 prospect in the game as of a year ago. Didn't have a great year, at least in Baltimore, in the major leagues, but is a guy that certainly would benefit from a chance. And if Westburg is out for any length of time, he's going to get that chance. So they have options here if Westburg is out. But again, Westburg was part of their young fabric, part of the reason why a lot of us believe this team was going to be set up well for the present and the future. They need him. And Kobe Mayo may turn out to be even better than Westburg, but we don't know that right now. He's still a prospect.
Ken, do you think that the Orioles are going to end up having a right-handed hitting logjam when perhaps Westburg is healthy, when Jackson Holliday, who's dealing with the hamate bone injury and the surgery there, when he comes back? Is that something to look at now, or is that a down-the-road type of problem?
Alanna, it's certainly a possibility, but these guys are not healthy right now. Jackson Holliday, not healthy. Jordan Westburg, not healthy. So that logjam, and I actually wrote about this, I believe, last week. The logjam was possible because of Mayo's presence and because Ryan Mountcastle is still on this team. First baseman behind Pete Alonso. It seems like there's no place for him, but as a DH first base type, yeah, maybe there is with these injuries. So obviously you're right, Alanna. If everybody ever gets healthy, yeah, they've got a logjam, and they've even explored trades for Mayo and Mountcastle. But with Westburg possibly out now, they've got to probably hold.
Yeah, I doubt very seriously that there's ever a time, Ken Rosenthal, when all 26 guys on the 26-man roster are healthy and ready to go. That would be quite the problem to have. All right, coming up here on Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal, it's your opportunity to ask Ken some questions. We'll be back with Grillin Ken right after this.
Territory with Ken Rosenthal is proudly part of the Foul Territory Network.
Listen to authentic conversations and unique insights across a variety of shows hosted by esteemed writers and all-stars alike. The people who know our game best.
I'm happy to be on. You guys have been doing such a great job with this show.
We debate baseball's hottest news while also chatting with over 700 current Major League players in laid-back, long-form conversations unique to FT.
One of my heels on the baseline, and then it's just trust the guy's going to bunt it and crash as hard as I can.
Catch us live from baseball's biggest events, winter meetings, all-star games, and award shows with access the other guys wish they could get.
That was my whole key to hitting was I mastered BP.
Subscribe on YouTube and rate 5 stars wherever you listen. Support your favorites and share us with a friend. We are changing the way baseball is consumed, and we want you right there with us. The Foul Territory Network. Baseball, the way it should be covered.
All right, welcome back to Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal. Time now to get some questions in for Ken. And the first one, Ken, that we're going to start with is regarding Patrick Corbin or John Gray in free agency. Is there any news about either of those guys? And of course, this gentleman or person says that he's wishing them best of luck.
Both former Texas Rangers, and to be perfectly honest, I have not heard anything about either of them so far this offseason and into spring training. Do I expect they'll be in camp? I'm not sure about Gray's health for starters. And Corbin, sure, I would think that some team would at least sign him to a minor league contract, but at the same time, he's still out there.
What about Lucas Giolito? That's a question just coming from me, Ken. Are you surprised that he's still out there looking for a job?
I am. He was hurt at the end of last season, so I don't know what his medicals look like, and perhaps that's a factor. Perhaps he is asking more than teams are willing to pay him. That probably is what's going on here. It's what always is going on when a player lingers into free agency. But I would expect he is going to sign and probably sign fairly soon.
All right, National League West news, a question about Tony Vitello, the new manager, of course, of the San Francisco Giants, who's already kind of making some waves, Ken, if you will, in terms of media and those types of questions. All right, so Tony Vitello, first, before we get to the question itself, what has been your impression of him so far in the first couple of weeks, if you will, being the Giants manager?
Well, I was around the Giants 2 days. The first day they had pitchers and catchers working out, and then a couple of days later, to interview Tony Vitello for Fox, and we'll have that interview later at some point during the season. He is obviously a guy who is new to the major league experience. He is not new to baseball and competitive baseball, and he did it at a high level at Tennessee. We all know that. The comments that he made in the press conference the other day, he started his press conference, his daily news briefing with reporters, by talking about the fact that it got out that he was going to be perhaps the Giants manager before maybe he wanted it to get out. Now, I was one of the people who wrote that story with Brick Uroli and Andrew Baggerly. And what we wrote at the time was that the Giants were closing in on the hiring of Vitello. We didn't write that he had an offer. We just wrote that he was the target. He was the guy. Now, I haven't spoken specifically to Tony Vitello about this. He didn't bring it up to me, but if he does, I will tell him, listen, this is what we were hearing. And I know the timing probably didn't work out too well for him. Maybe he hadn't informed players and coaches at Tennessee and even family members, people he was close with, about how this was going, where it was going. But we were hearing it, and we were hearing it from credible enough sources to, of course, publish. Of course, he gets named the Giants manager as well. So obviously we were on the right track. He might not have liked the timing, but our obligation is to our readers, and that is what we did there.
Okay, let's get to the actual question in terms of Grillin Ken here regarding Tony Vitello. If we could put that up momentarily, I'd appreciate that very much. All right, so Sarah Harmon wants to know, Ken, what did you think of the comments by Tony Vitello earlier this week and the timing of the offer? So it's along the same lines of what
that's
you
what I'm talking about, Alanna.
Yeah,
That's what I'm referring to. That was his complaint.
right.
That the report about the offer, or it wasn't even a report about an offer, it was a report about the Giants closing in, was in his mind premature. And okay, he can feel that way, but again, we had what we had and we felt compelled to publish, and that is why we published.
Okay, very good. Next question here on Grillin Ken. Spring training can also be extension season, but should we expect less than usual over the next few weeks due to the incoming labor dispute? Fair question. Are there any players, teams we should keep an eye on? This is from Mike G15.
Mike G15, to be perfectly honest, I have not been focused on extensions. I am sure we will see some, even with the looming dispute in 27 and the possibility of games being canceled. We've seen free agents sign contracts beyond and including 27, of course. So I don't know that it would be any different in the extension market, perhaps a little bit different. But every spring, toward the end of spring, we do hear of extensions, and I'm sure that will be the case again this spring.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear of the Max Muncy extension when that happened. Obviously, this is a guy that even said, he left some money on the table, but Los Angeles is the place that he wants to be. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to be talking about our Dudes and Dorks of the Week. We'll be right back.
Hey, when you get a chance, subscribe to Foul Territory on YouTube. We are getting very close to 300,000 subscribers on the channel and love all of them. So we'd love you to join us on that channel as we break down everything going on across the sport. It is baseball the way it should be covered at Foul Territory. Give us a sub. The top downloaded Atlanta Braves podcast is called Hammer Territory, and you should check it out if you're a Braves fan, or even if you don't love the Braves or you're in that division rooting for another team. This show has it all for you. Hammer Territory, wherever you get your podcasts, and you can check them out on YouTube. Just type in Hammer Territory for Braves coverage. BetMGM account holders, today, how about an any sport parlay boost token? You can score a bigger payout if your wager with that token hits. Tokens can be used on parlays and on same game parlays. Gambling problem or concern? There's help. Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Dude.
This is always a fun time. I love that we can point the fingers, although we have named ourselves Dude and Dorks of the Week. Well, definitely Dorks of the Week at a certain point. Okay, we will start with Dude, and Ken, you have the honors. Who is your Dude of the Week?
Bobby Witt Jr. And I wrote about him earlier this week. The story came out the same day that all hell broke loose with the union. So I don't know that a lot of people read it, but the story was about how 3 years ago, Bobby Witt Jr. was the kid on Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. It was the youngest member of the team. He had only one full season in the major leagues. He was kind of the little brother. And yet, even at that time, the other players on the team could see how talented he was. They loved him because he was mature, he was humble, and all of that. Well, now, 2026, WBC, Bobby Witt Jr. will be at the center of it all as Team USA's starting shortstop. It's just kind of a cool evolution. We see it all the time in our sport, and it's his moment now.
No question, one of the best shortstops in the game and one of the best people as an ambassador of our great game. My Dude of the Week is Ozzie Albies. He loves fish, Ken. I love dogs. Ozzie Albies loves fish. Well, he had some time in this offseason. He went to a local elementary school and taught these young kids how to properly take care of some fish in a tank. So took time out of his day. He set up the tank. He set up all the fish. He talked to them about the care of not only taking care of the fish itself, but the proper cleaning of the tank. And they get to keep it, those fish as kind of their class pets. So kind of a nice entree into how to take some responsibility for animals. I thought that was really sweet of Ozzie Albies to take one of his passions and spread it in the Atlanta community. All right, time now for Dork of the Week.
All right.
It's funny, Ken, we have unfortunately a lot to choose from this week, and it's an interesting thing. If you take a look at this text thread that you and I had with our producer and director, Jeremy Meyer, early on in this week, you had said that you were claiming Sam Kennedy and Tom Werner as Dorks of the Week right now. You said, I'm taking them right now. And of course I laughed because I understand why, because of the comments that they made about Rafael Devers. And then our producer, Jeremy, says, high bar to clear for the rest of the week. Well, he cleared it. Who's your Dude of the Week?
Dork of the Week, Tony Clark. And yes, he did clear the bar. And what was so surprising to me about what happened here was that I always thought and I always heard that Tony Clark, for whatever his faults might be as the head of the union, was a man of integrity. And there have been a lot of questions raised about his integrity even before the news of his resignation. Questions about the way he was handling the union's finances. A whistleblower kind of came out and accused him of a number of things a few years ago, and then the FBI investigation commenced. Now, on top of that, we have the reported inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, confirmed by The Athletic, first reported by ESPN, that led to his resignation. All of these things combined, yes, he tops Sam Kennedy and Tom Werner. Yes, he is, and I say this sadly, the Dork of the Week.
Yeah, I understand completely. It was a shock to all of us that know Tony Clark and obviously care about this great game. My Dork of the Week, once again, is the Angels. Not for what they're doing on the field, Ken, but what they're doing to our colleagues, their television partners. They are not televising a single spring training game on television. Rhett Bollinger tweeting that Angels will not televise any of their Cactus League games, the club announced, but they will be on Angels radio. So you can still, if you're not here in Tempe to get the Angels game in person, you can hear it on the radio. But what does this say to you, Ken, that not as I understand they don't have to televise all 30 or 32 or whatever it is, but to not televise a single spring training game, it just seems another lazy approach by the Angels.
I don't know all the details here, Alana, but you're keeping your product away from your fans. And if the idea of spring training and televising spring training games is to get people excited for the regular season, well, the Angels are failing in that regard. Now, their team isn't all that exciting to begin with, so okay, but that's the point. The televising of spring training games is largely promotional. It gives fans an appetite, gets them ready for the season, gets people interested in some of the new players that you might have. So, from that perspective, I don't understand what the Angels are doing. Again, I don't know all the particulars, the ins and outs of the television arrangement, but not to have any spring training games televised, not good.
And it also, as you mentioned, takes the product away from the fan base. But it also, if the broadcasters are not here, it takes away their opportunity to interact with the players and start thinking of some storylines and, establish those relationships perhaps with new players. It's just unfortunate all the way around. I'm assuming it's a cost-cutting measure, but I'm not certain about that. Well, if you're watching on TV, thank you very much. We're going to see you guys next time. We have a couple of more minutes on the YouTube side right after this. All right. If you are still with us, appreciate that very much. Ken, the reason I look like I'm in jail is because I'm not at home. I'm actually at Camelback Ranch. I'm at the Dodgers camp today, and we're also doing a foul territory from the Dodgers camp tomorrow. So a couple of things that I'm noticing here. Teoscar Hernandez, kind of the best shape of his life. And also, I wanted to get your thoughts on Mookie Betts, perhaps in the 3-hole. Dave Roberts saying that he could possibly be there. Kyle Tucker in the 2-hole, of course. Shohei leading off. Formidable lineup, but your thoughts about Mookie in the 3-hole?
First off, Teoscar, Alana, yes, it's the best shape of his life, whatever. But he did lose 12 pounds, I believe. And he knew that last year his play in right field was not up to par. He's moving to left with Kyle Tucker coming in to play right. And to me, it's encouraging a guy like Teoscar, who is a veteran, who has a contract, who could conceivably rest on whatever laurels he has acquired. He could do that, and he's not doing that. He obviously is driven to be better, and that is a very good sign for the Dodgers. This is a talented dude and a huge part of what they do. Now, as for the lineup, Mookie Betts hitting third. This is a fascinating decision that Dave Roberts faced, and it's a fascinating outcome as well. Mookie Betts, of course, is coming off one of his worst offensive years, maybe his worst. And, of course, what happened was he got sick early and never seemed to catch up. We all know that. But Dave Roberts is essentially saying here, Mookie is still our guy. He is still a huge part of what we do. He was always going to bat in the top 4. We knew that. But the 3 spot, that's a spot of great responsibility. And it just seems that Roberts is showing a lot of confidence in Betts, and probably well-placed confidence because of who Mookie Betts is and how driven he is to succeed. You see the lineup right there. Now, it was always going to be a case where you had 2 left-handed hitters back-to-back among the top 4 with those 4 guys. You couldn't avoid it. But Shohei and Tucker back-to-back. Tucker can handle lefties just fine. And then Mookie, Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy, Teoscar Hernandez, Andy Pages, and Tommy Edman when healthy. He's not going to be healthy to start the season. It's a formidable group. And if Teoscar is back to being what he has been, if Mookie returns to something close to the old Mookie Betts, then with the addition of Kyle Tucker, you're looking at perhaps, and I say perhaps because you do not know how this is going to turn out, perhaps an even more dynamic offense than we've seen from the Dodgers in their back-to-back World Series championship years.
Which is hard to believe. Quickly before we say goodbye, Ken, Tommy Edman not ready for opening day. Who do you see getting the majority of playing time at second base for LA?
Unclear to me, Alana. What do you think on that one?
I can see a lot of Ha-Seong Kim, honestly, there.
Yeah.
They want to get him some more at-bats. They want to see what he can do. Opportunity, obviously, if Tommy Edman's not back for opening day, Alex Call getting some more opportunities in the outfield to spell some of the guys in the outfield as far as Teoscar and Tucker and Pajes. But I think Ha-Seong Kim gets the majority of time at second base.
And Rojas will get some time too, I'm sure. So they're, as always, in decent shape.
Yeah, they are in decent shape. And so are you, Ken Rosenthal. Have a great time. I believe you're heading to what, Red Sox tomorrow? Is that what you're
Yes,
doing?
I'm flying to Florida today, and I will be at Red Sox camp tomorrow. 10 days in Florida coming up.
Okay, and I will be back at Dodgers camp tomorrow. And then, of course, Ken will be back on Fair Territory on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Take care.